so that we have to make all the final decisions. I mean, everything from the, type of window to the color of the walls and things like that have to
The
be
fun
determined.
stuff.
Yeah.
So bring some of the fun stuff to our meetings.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Materials.
Next couple of items on the agenda, Kathy, I'm going to just skip over because we have people here for the budget forum. We can get back to those later. So we'll just skip over for right now, Director of Finance and Operations search update and the school committee meeting schedule. And we'll go right to the budget forum, and I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight, particular selectmen, Chairman Masseri and Vice Chairman Delaney and Member Mike Prisco. The reason for tonight's meeting is Mel Webster had come up with the idea of having a forum prior to us having our regular budget hearing to look to input from the public. And we've been laboring over the budget for the last 3 or 4 or 5 months. We initially came forward with the theory that we would go with a level services budget, which we've done over the last several years. Unfortunately, level services is not the same as level funding. So the funding that we had available to us through revenue was considerably less than the cost of the level services budget. We have a finance planning team that meets every month or every couple of months, or certainly every month during the budget process, that consists of the chairman and vice chairs of the finance committee, the board of selectmen, the school committee, as well as the superintendent, the school finance director, the director of finance for the town, and the town administrator. And it's been remarkably helpful over the years to have this group meet together to review revenues going forward, because the revenue projections change. I mean, a big part of the revenue that we have coming to the town is coming from the state, and we don't know exactly what those revenues are. Plus, we have to monitor revenues coming into the town from various sources. So we got some very good news at last week's finance planning team meeting. Was it last week that we had the meeting?
Yeah.
Yes.
Last week's meeting. And based on a number of different factors, including, savings that we realized through, snow and ice and things like that, we were able to bring up the available funds for the school department budget to $24,935,589. Am I right, Kyle, on that?
Yes.
And that resulted,
Could you repeat that number?
yeah, it's $24,935,589. That's the available funds. That's still about $283,000 short of our level services budget, but we have made great strides, and we've tried to identify some areas where we may have some savings and some other areas where there might be potential additional revenues. So I'm going to ask Kyle Nelson, our finance director, to do a presentation on the status of the budget right now. And then really what we want from the public is ideas about what they would like to include in the budget, if not going forward into fiscal 13, but including fiscal 13, and going forward, the types of things that they would like to see us do in the future if funds were available. And also to comment on this particular budget, which again is still a little bit short. I mean, significantly less than what it was a week or 2 weeks ago. So, Kyle, floor is yours.
Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate the opportunity to make this presentation to the public. As Jerry mentioned, the budget process in many ways is a continuum in that we follow a rough calendar every single year, and we end up having some kind of outcome. So I thought this presentation today would try to provide a context for the discussion that we're going to have today and in the weeks ahead, and also provide a background to the process that we undertake every year. I wish that the budget process was a straight line. It would be much easier for all of us if we had all of our numbers and revenue projections and expense needs up front early in the process. But unfortunately, it's not like that. One of the examples that we commonly use that describes one of the inherent problems in the budget process is that the state's Chapter 70 aid to education funding is an estimate for us as we go through this entire budget process. In fact, we don't generally know what this Chapter 70 allocation is going to be, sometimes until as late as June. So that's why I thought the crooked path helped us understand some of the challenges that we face as we go through this process. So let's begin by talking about the budget development process here in the school department. We kick off the process in October, and it runs through January generally. And during that period, the late fall, early winter period, superintendent is facilitating discussions with the principals and the department heads in the school department, where we're trying to understand what level services could be. We knew early in the process this year that the school committee wished the administration to put together a modified level services plan. So as much as we were interested in looking at and discussing some growth opportunities and some enhancements, we enumerated them and we have them available for discussion, but we did not subsume them within the budget. So that's one of the first things we do during that process. At the same time, we start to look at the salary costs that we are aware of in this process. We go through all of our employee groups and we quantify the costs of all of our employees. At times there are unknowns for us because we don't always have collective bargaining agreements in place for all of our groups. And this year is an example of that. Our teachers are not under agreement for next year. So as we begin to quantify these salary costs, we use projections and estimates. Another important part of the process that we undertake during the fall period is to look at enrollment. We do see a change going through our system, and it's important to make sure that we dedicate our resources appropriately, and we do that. So even though this budget that we're going to be discussing tonight has a similar full-time equivalent staffing level, you'll see some adjustments that are taking place based on shifts away from elementary to secondary. This process culminates in the January period when we release the preliminary budget. And at that point, the public discussion begins, where we know at that point what the preliminary budget is going to cost us. At the same time, analysis is taking place by other town officials. And one of the first things that are discussed during this period, primarily during February and March, is what revenues are available for the municipal government and school department to move forward with. What ends up happening during these discussions, particularly during the meetings that Jerry alluded to a moment ago, all of the revenue sources are researched and analyzed to see what funds would be available to support the budget requests in the following year. Chapter 70 I've mentioned, that's the aid to education, that's state money. And then there are many town sources that are analyzed. As many of us know, when the economy takes a downturn, many of the town sources aren't as plentiful as we'd like. Look at auto excise taxes. As residents of the town of North Reading, you know that when the economy is not strong, people aren't buying new cars, which has an impact on the excise taxes that the town collects. Same thing can happen with property taxes. People aren't building decks. People aren't putting additions on. So the growth of property tax collections isn't what we have seen in previous years. So all of these many other revenue sources are researched during this period, including free cash and many others. Also during this period, the finance planning team and town officials are looking at what the costs are on a townwide basis on the expense side as well. There are a lot of common expenses that the school department and the municipal government research and work towards. Health insurance being a very important one. One of the largest components of local expense. Snow and ice. I'm going to speak about some of these in a minute. So these are some retirements. See, these are some of the major cost drivers which contribute to our ability to fund town and school government. Utilities, another important one. So during this whole process, by the way, there were other things going on in the school department that we were also thinking about. I think many of you recognize the new secondary floor plan, and I thought it appropriate to just slip that slide in there because we have many other things going on during this budget process this year. And of course, there's the aerial view of our new school. And at the same time, we're all very pleased about the outcome. So, as we start to bring this segment of the discussion to a close, we move towards the month of April. And we put all this together. All the analysis that I've talked about a moment ago kind of reaches the end of this continuum. And in the month of April, a lot of decisions have to be made. Town officials have to make final determinations for what revenue looks like, what expenses look like. The school department and the school committee has to take a position on what the school budget will be. And as Chairman Valencia alluded to before, we've had some wonderful news in that it appears that some cost-saving measures that have been undertaken by town officials in the area of health insurance will contribute to additional revenue that will be made available to school and town. In addition, we've had a mild winter. There will be a manifestation there that will be beneficial once again to our budget process. The amount of money being spent this past winter for snow and highway maintenance is lower than we've seen in recent years. FEMA reimbursements is yet another. That is reimbursement from the state for some of the major storms that took place. So we have some good news underway here, which is going to make our process a little more positive. So let's look at where we're heading in the next couple months. Tonight, of course, we're eliciting feedback from the public to see what sort of things the school committee should consider as it considers over the next 2 weeks what the budget will be. 2 weeks from tonight, the school committee will take a formal position on a budget number that, excuse me, 2 weeks from tonight there'll be a budget hearing here in the middle school at the large group room whereby we will talk further
About the details of the
about
budget.
the details. A week hence, the school committee will take a vote on that budget. That vote gets transmitted to the selectmen, who take that vote into consideration, because I believe it is on May 7th that the selectmen will be voting the omnibus budget for town meeting, and that forms the basis of the warrant for town. And then, of course, town meeting is on June 4th. So as we finish up this quick presentation, I think I started out talking about the crooked path. I think at this time it's important to, as we start to close off the discussion about the budget, this picture I think represents a lot of people working together to straighten out that path and to do what's best for the town. And I know we all appreciate that.
Thank you, Kyle. Thanks. All right, and then, again, we had mentioned about the reduction of the so-called level services deficit down to about $283,000. Kathy, did you want to talk at all about any of the items that you thought you might be able to realize as savings to even reduce that number further, or?
We're taking a look at, obviously, all aspects of the budget. We will be restructuring. We have some retirements that we're taking a look at that will provide some opportunities for us to restructure particular departments. We're also taking a look at where our enrollment is down and where we might have some potential savings around restructuring some of those grade levels and/or schools where enrollment is declining. We're seeing a particular decline in enrollment at the elementary level. Right now, the projections are for next year, we will be down by 69 students across the elementary schools. We will be down by 2 students at the middle school, but up by 12 at the high school, and that's our projections as of today. So we're also projecting that we'll have approximately $50,000 of carryover from FY12 to FY13, so that will assist in decreasing that gap between what is projected and what the preliminary budget includes. So at this point in time, we're hoping that members of the audience will be able to give us their input around what you want to see protected, preserved, what your priority areas are for funding, and the school committee had informed me that several years ago there was an opportunity for the audience to provide this kind of input into the budget development, and they welcomed that opportunity for that to happen again. And as Mr. Venezia said, Mr. Webster brought it up at a recent meeting, and the committee felt that it was a good idea in order for the public to have this opportunity.
And it's input for us going forward, not only for this next fiscal year, because obviously things are tight, but going forward even beyond that, the types of things that you may feel that we can expand our curriculum, we can expand our course offerings and things of that nature. So I'd open it up to anybody, members of the Board of Selectmen, or anybody in the audience that has any comments or questions about the FY13 budget, or any input into where they would like to see us go from here. But we are very pleased that we've been able to close this gap. and was through a great deal of cooperation between the Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen,